U.S. and Ukrainian officials wrapping up talks in Miami yesterday as Russia fired more than 600 drones at Ukraine. This comes as Russian President Putin is threatening to take over the Donbas region by force if Ukrainian troops do not withdraw. Stephanie Bennett is live in London with more. Hi, Stephanie.
Hey, Mike, to put things into perspective, President Zelensky released some new numbers. Just this week alone, Russia has launched more than 1,600 attack drones, 1,200 guided aerial bombs, and almost 70 missiles across the country. Now, nightly Russian attacks, they have become a regular routine. Many residents have been cut off from electricity, water, and also light. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, President Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner, and Ukrainian negotiators said they made progress this week, meeting 3 times in Florida, but said any real progress toward an agreement ultimately will depend on Russia's readiness to show serious commitment to long-term peace. Speaking at the Reagan National Defense Forum, outgoing U.S. Special Envoy for Ukraine, Keith Kellogg, said efforts to end the war are really close.
You realize the last 10 meters to objective is always your hardest. That's where the friction of war really sets in.
Deal depends on the 2 outstanding issues, including territory, primarily the future of the Donbas region, and also Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, Europe's largest, which is under Russian control. President Putin warned that Russia would take full control of the Donbas by force unless Ukrainian forces withdraw. Zelensky saying he's not giving up any territory and that Putin is just stalling. Despite Witkoff and Kushner spending 5 hours at the Kremlin last Tuesday, Putin's top foreign aide was quoted by Russian media today saying that the U.S. would have to make serious, radical changes to their papers on Ukraine without disclosing any details. And patience is wearing thin. At an event in Qatar today, Donald Trump Jr. said the U.S. can't keep funding the conflict.
I don't think Ukraine is going to be abandoned, but I think for years, again, it was the same thing as the last answer, which is, well, we want to attack Russia. We want to do this. Well, when it comes to actually writing a check ourselves, no, the U.S. is going to do it. The American public doesn't have an appetite for that.
And President Zelensky will be here in London tomorrow on Monday, meeting with the UK Prime Minister, President of France, and the German Chancellor to discuss things even further. Back to you.
Stephanie Bennett, thanks very much. For more on this, let's bring in Senior Advisor at Razom and Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council, Melinda Haring. Melinda, welcome.
Great to be with you, Mike. Thank you.
My understanding is you've just returned from 5 days in Kyiv. I'm wondering what your key takeaways were from that visit.
Mike, it is dark and hard. I spent 3 of the last 4 nights in the bomb shelter in Kiev. There are brownouts and blackouts across the country, and there's a shortage of water. In Kiev, though, I would say the mood is one where people are getting ready for Christmas, and they are still pushing ahead. So I got to see Ukraine's first indigenous cruise missile that has just been produced, tested. I also went to a Christmas celebration at the leading children's hospital and gave away 600 packages to children who have cancer and have rare diseases. So in spite of these images that you see, Ukrainians are they are determined to stay put and live their lives and celebrate the holidays, and they're totally committed to being in their own country.
President Zelensky said after meeting with Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff that they had very positive discussions. They agreed to next steps in the formats for continued talks. That sounds quite positive. But what about Vladimir Putin?
It does sound positive, but Mike, you have to dig into the details. So the 2 points of contention and the 2 issues we can't get past are territory and security guarantees. The Ukrainians are not going to give in and stop fighting unless the U.S. provides real security guarantees. That original plan that came out 2 weeks ago with 28-point plan had fake security guarantees. There was no automatic trigger. If there's peace and there's no promise that if Russia attacks Ukraine, that the U.S. would come and aid Ukraine. Ukraine is not going to stop fighting unless it has real ironclad security guarantees where Congress has signed on the dotted line. They remember 1994 when they gave up their nuclear weapons in exchange for security assurances from the United States, from Russia, and from France. And they're not going to make that same mistake this time. There was also only a 10-year commitment. 10 years is not very much time, and Russia's time horizons are very long. And on the issue of territory, the original plan called on Ukraine to give up territory that it currently holds. And this land is in the Donbas. This is land that Ukraine has defended for 11 years, and it's crucial to the defense of Ukraine. They have heavily fortified cities that are strategically important, and they're not going to give these areas away at all.
I know President Trump, Secretary Rubio, Witkoff, and all of them are giving it their best effort. But is there any evidence that Vladimir Putin is interested in a deal?
Mike, I can't see any. Like I said, I just spent 4 days in Kiev, and I spent a lot of time in the bomb shelters below. And that's the reality on the ground. If President Putin were serious about peace, he would stop hitting hospitals. He would stop hitting schools. He would stop his shelling. We see him increasing his shelling. There's a relentless number of drones and missiles, and they're striking civilian targets. So I see no interest. He hasn't shown any willingness in the discussions to give as well. So as far as one can reasonably determine, Putin is not serious. And now he's threatening. He's saying, if you don't give me what you want, we're going to take the rest of the territory. So now he seems to be throwing another tantrum because he's not getting what he wants at the negotiating table.
Do you have thoughts on a next play by President Trump and his team?
So I think President Trump and First Lady Melania should get huge praise for what they did this weekend. They were involved in the release of 7 Ukrainian children. So Russia has taken more, they've stolen more than 20,000 Ukrainian children. And Melania Trump in particular has been brilliant at making this issue known. And they got those children released. Now, what happens next? I think President Trump is getting frustrated that there's no progress. We got to give President Trump a lot of credit. He's trying to resolve this war. He hates war, and he's doing his very best. He has to increase the pressure on President Trump, or he has to increase the pressure on President Putin now. He has all the cards. He can do this. He can authorize another assistance package in Congress. He can provide more air defense. This is what Ukrainians need right now to get through the winter. He can lessen exports control on all kinds of parts that the Ukrainians need. And importantly, he can tighten sanctions on Russia. He has the ability to do it right now. So President Trump, well done on the release of the children. Let's do some more. There's at least 35,000 more children that are waiting for you and Melania Trump this Christmas season, and they would love to go home to their parents in Ukraine.
Melinda, thank you very much for your analysis today.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.